Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we explore one of the darkest and most controversial developments emerging from the battlefield. Reports have surfaced that Russian commanders, faced with the growing difficulty of evacuating their wounded soldiers, have adopted a new and shocking method to deal with the problem. Instead of risking rescue attempts under heavy fire, instead of organizing medical convoys that are often destroyed by Ukrainian strikes, some units are allegedly eliminating their own wounded on the spot. This story is difficult to process, yet it demands attention, because it speaks volumes about the desperation, the brutality, and the psychological collapse unfolding deep inside the war zone. On the outside, the broader context explains how such a horrific measure even comes into consideration. The Russian army has been engaged in a long and draining conflict that has stretched its supply lines and weakened its logistics. Evacuating wounded soldiers requires vehicles, helicopters, field hospitals, trained medics, and secured routes. All of these have become scarce in many sectors of the front. Ukrainian forces have deliberately targeted supply depots, ammunition hubs, and evacuation corridors, making it nearly impossible for Russian commanders to keep up with the demands of traditional medical care. The official policy may still promise rescue and treatment, but the reality at the exterior level shows a system collapsing under pressure. In this fragile state, commanders who want to avoid slowing down their troops or exposing their units to ambushes may turn to the unthinkable. Inside the ranks, the mood is deteriorating fast. Soldiers join armies believing that if they are wounded, their comrades will do everything possible to bring them home alive. It is part of the unspoken bond that keeps men fighting together. But the interior atmosphere in Russian units today is filled with fear, suspicion, and hopelessness. Stories circulate of soldiers who were left behind, of wounded men who were quietly silenced rather than saved. These are not just rumors whispered in the trenches, they shape the everyday psychology of those still fighting. The knowledge that an injury may no longer mean evacuation but execution changes the very spirit of a soldier. It breeds paranoia and weakens the will to fight. Instead of feeling valued, many feel disposable. Looking at the performance of this policy, commanders may see some short-term advantages. By removing evacuation from their responsibilities, they can keep units moving faster. There is no need to assign trucks or ambulances to dangerous rescue missions. Soldiers who are no longer able to fight are simply erased from the equation, leaving the units seemingly lighter and more mobile. But this performance assessment is narrow and deeply flawed. Armies do not win wars solely on mobility or efficiency. They win because soldiers believe in their mission and trust the structure they fight under. When that trust is shattered, no amount of speed or logistical savings can make up for the internal collapse. Soldiers who fear their own commanders may fight with hesitation, may even seek ways to surrender, defect, or avoid combat altogether. The performance gain of the moment is swallowed by the long-term damage to cohesion and morale. Safety in warfare is already a relative term, but traditionally, militaries take pride in creating systems that protect their wounded. Whether it is combat medics rushing into danger, armored evacuation vehicles designed to pull casualties from the front, or airlifts that whisk the injured away to field hospitals, these are considered sacred duties. They reassure every fighter that his life matters. What makes this alleged policy so devastating is that it removes safety entirely. There are no features left to shield the vulnerable. Instead of being cared for, soldiers who fall in battle become liabilities. The so-called solution is not to protect them but to dispose of them. This transforms the battlefield into a place not only of danger from the enemy, but also of lethal risk from one's own side. The psychological impact is enormous, stripping away the last vestiges of trust in a chain of command already under strain. In terms of justification, commanders may attempt to create their own unique selling points for such a grim approach. They may argue that leaving the wounded behind risks capture and interrogation by the enemy, potentially compromising operational security. They may claim that eliminating those who cannot be saved spares them from suffering or prevents others from being killed in reckless rescue attempts. They may even suggest that this keeps units lean and battle-ready, unburdened by those unable to continue. These arguments are cold and pragmatic, yet they serve as the internal narrative for why something so inhumane could be tolerated. But to the soldiers themselves, these so-called benefits ring hollow. What is sold as efficiency feels instead like betrayal, and no propaganda can disguise the truth when men see it with their own eyes. When we think about price, it goes far beyond financial costs. The true price of this method is paid in human lives, in broken morale, and in the destruction of basic trust. From a material standpoint, Russia may save resources by cutting down on evacuations, vehicles, medical supplies, and hospital infrastructure. They may even believe the reduced logistical burden gives them an edge. But the invisible price is incalculable. Families who expect their sons to return wounded may instead receive silence. Soldiers who would otherwise fight bravely may surrender sooner rather than risk being abandoned. The international community, already skeptical of Russian conduct in the war, sees this as further proof of cruelty and disregard for human rights. The price of short-term efficiency is long-term condemnation and a steadily weakening military force. Ultimately, the conclusion is clear. What may appear as a tactical adjustment is in fact a sign of desperation and decline. Eliminating one's own wounded is not a sign of strength but of collapse. It shows that the system meant to care for its fighters can no longer function. It reveals commanders who are so pressed for options that they abandon the most basic moral and strategic principles. Wars are not won by fear alone, they are won by unity, discipline, and the belief that every member of the force matters. By discarding that belief, Russia undermines its own army from within. For the outside world, this policy is a reminder of the brutal cost of prolonged conflict and the human suffering hidden behind official statements. For the soldiers living it, it is a nightmare that makes survival feel as uncertain from their own side as from the enemy. This is not a sustainable path, and history will remember it not as a clever strategy but as one of the darkest chapters in modern warfare.